Hello, and welcome to this short presentation about animal justice in Massachusetts. This YouTube video will educate you about current mass animal law and the concept of animal justice. Like Tito, you may be curious to know what the term animal justice means. Well, animal justice refers to enforcing and improving the laws that protect animals from abuse and neglect. Our animal friends are sometimes the victims of violence and neglect. And when those unfortunate events happen, we need laws to both protect animals and properly punish the humans responsible. Animal justice is becoming an increasingly important issue in the state of Massachusetts. Activists, professionals, and citizens agree that current mass law doesn't protect animals enough, and there are organizations who are working to create positive change. To help you decide whether or not the law sufficiently protects animals, we'll go through current mass animal law, criticisms of the law, animal activism, and resources. First, let's go through some key definitions and statutes that are found throughout current mass animal law. The legal definition of adoption is the delivery of a cat or dog to any person 18 years of age or older for the purpose of harboring as a pet. When the law books talk about the commissioner, they're referring to the Commissioner of Public Health. This individual oversees many facets of animal control. When the law books refer to the director, they're talking about the individual responsible for overseeing all the money given and spent by government employees such as animal control officers. With permits, licensure, fines, and operation costs, animal professionals employed by the state are responsible for numerous financial transactions that the director must oversee. The dog fund is comprised of what animal control officers take as payment for licenses, fees, and fines. Dog officers are appointed to specifically enforce dog law. These individuals are usually experienced police officers. Keeper refers to the person responsible for the dog. For example, if your mother adopts a dog, the shelter is no longer the keeper, your mother is. If your mother then goes on vacation and leaves the dog with you, you're the keeper until she returns. You'll see the importance of keepership when we look at dog law. The legal definition of kennel is lengthy, but you know that a kennel is a boarding facility for dogs. The license period is defined as the time between April 1st and March 31st. However, this licensure period is for specific types of permits. Dog licenses can be acquired at any time. Another lengthy legal definition. Basically, if you're keeping any animal as a means of livelihood, it's livestock. For example, if you keep a cow in your barn and sell its milk for money, that's livestock. If the cow lives on your property with you and you consider it a pet, it's not livestock. And another long one. Essentially, a research institution for purposes of animal law needs to be a school or facility that researches biology in some way. Finally, a shelter is defined as either an animal control facility or organization that seeks to protect animals. Now we're going to dive into the different sections of mass law. This section of mass law explains licensing and kennel provisions. As keeper of a dog in Massachusetts, you're legally required to register, number, describe, and acquire a license for your dog with the animal control office in your town. Essentially, you must get identification tags for your dog. To receive these tags, you must have a certificate from an accredited veterinarian stating that the dog has been properly vaccinated. Though it may seem like an annoying process, it truly benefits you to have your dog's identification number and description in the system. If your pet were to run away and be brought to the animal control officer, the officer can then look up the tag numbers and return your pet to you. There are several lengthy sections of mass law dedicated to kennel licensure. Every person maintaining a kennel must have a kennel license. Additionally, the keeper of less than 4 dogs that are 3 months or older who does not maintain a kennel can secure a kennel license instead of having to register each individual dog. Citizens concerned about the excessive noise created by a neighborhood kennel can start a petition that must be heard by the mayor or town selectmen. If officials determine the petition is factual, the kennel's license to operate will be revoked. What's most important to understand from this section of law is that kennels must maintain the utmost standard of healthy care for animals or face closure. The Board of Health for every city and town must offer rabies vaccinations and medications free of charge to infected humans. Everyone is required to vaccinate their dog before the age of 6 months or within 3 months of moving into the state, whichever comes first. Vets will issue a tag verifying the vaccination. The fine for noncompliance is no more than $50. Essentially, dog bite law states that the keeper of a dog who bites or harms someone is responsible for the dog's actions, unless the bitten individual was committing a trespass, teasing, tormenting, or abusing such dog. This means that the exception to the dog bite rule is if your dog bites an individual who trespasses on your property or is protecting you from being harmed. However, if the trespasser or attacker is under the age of 7, responsibility for the bite falls on the keeper, not the child. Take responsibility for your pet at all times to keep both the animal and other citizens safe. If any dog does damage to another person or their property, the keeper is responsible. If an action is brought against an animal officer, that officer will be held responsible for the expenses and damages which occurred, not the state. Though it may seem cruel, any person may kill a dog which suddenly assaults him while he is peacefully standing. The killer will only be held criminally liable if it's proven that the person acted out of cruelty to the animal and not self-defense. Remember, unless the person trespassed or was teasing the dog, the owner will be held responsible for any damage done. Leash law is simple. When out in public, dogs must be kept on a leash. Failure to do so will result in a $50 fine. No dog shall be put to death by carbon monoxide chamber unless the chamber produces 4% concentration of carbon monoxide in 5 minutes, the gas used is cooled and filtered before entering such a chamber, and the temperature inside does not exceed 85 degrees. Most veterinarians and other officials use a more humane injection rather than carbon monoxide chambers anyway. Research institutions cannot use dogs or cats in scientific investigation, experimentation, or instruction for the testing of drugs or medicine without receiving a license first. To qualify for this license, the research must be in the public interest. As dogs and cats tend to be family pets, it's considered more egregious to do any sort of scientific experiment on them compared to other types of animals. The Black's Law Dictionary lists the definition of animal cruelty as this: the infliction of physical pain, suffering, or death upon an animal when not necessary for purposes of training or discipline, to procure food, or to release the animal from incurable suffering, but done wantonly for mere sport, for the indulgence of a cruel and vindictive temper, or with reckless indifference to pain. Anyone who maliciously kills, maims, or disfigures any horse, cattle, or other animal will go to state prison for no more than 5 years and or receive a fine of not more than $2,500. The director may make and enforce reasonable orders, rules, and regulations as it relates to the health of animals. However, no rules take effect until approved by the governor and council. Livestock disease statutes give officials the funds and authority necessary to ensure sanitary cattle conditions, suppression and elimination of contagious diseases of domestic animals, establishing disease-free herds of cattle, inspecting, examining, carrying, treating, and destroying of animals affected or exposed to contagious disease. If there is reasonable cause to believe that an exhibition of fighting birds, dogs, or other animals is occurring, a search warrant can be issued to officers to search the premises and take possession of the animals and other equipment. All offenders, meaning both the organizers and the audience members, will be arrested. Any officer can enter and seize such animals without a warrant if there are exigent or emergency circumstances. Whoever performs or orders a devocalization or voice softening surgery will face criminal charges. This surgery is considered inhumane and isn't legal in Massachusetts unless medically necessary. Essentially, the law states that motor vehicles must stop for horses, cows, and other draft animals as they're crossing the road. This may seem like a no-brainer to most, and it's mentioned in the same section of law as failure to stop for a school bus. Keepers of a stallion for breeding purposes must have a certificate including the name, color, age, size, and pedigree before advertising the stallion's services. Neglecting this law will result in zero compensation for the owner. Making false stallion certificates results in a fine of $100. Internet hunting, or online shooting or spearing, means the use of a computer or any other device to remotely control the aiming and discharge of any weapon, including but not limited to any firearm, bow and arrow, spear, slingshot, harpoon, or any other projectile device or any other weapon capable of killing or inflicting injury upon some sort of animal. Essentially, it's like having a robot in the woods that will shoot things for you while you're watching your computer screen at home. This activity is incredibly dangerous and incredibly illegal in Massachusetts. Shelters cannot give away a cat or a dog unless it's been neutered or spayed. This is to prevent overpopulation of cats and dogs. Trust for the care of animals is a provision in Mass law that allocates money to pay for organizations such as the Animal Rescue League of Boston and the MSPCA. These trusts allocate funds to provide a significant amount of support to the shelters that properly care for and advocate for animals in the state of Massachusetts. Certainly, the phrase lemon law makes you think that a consumer purchased something and didn't get what they paid for. As harsh as it may be, the same laws had to be created for pets. Puppy mills notoriously raise inbred and unhealthy puppies to sell for profit. Massachusetts wants to make sure that pet purchasers are receiving a well-cared-for animal. Dog or cat purchasers shall be given a full refund within 14 days if a vet determines the animal is diseased or has some sort of congenital disorder. This law encourages breeders to follow proper procedures if they ever want to make a profit. Animal control is the agency responsible for enforcing ordinances related to the control, impoundment, and disposition of animals. This agency is primarily responsible for domestic animals. See your local animal control officer if you have any questions about animal licensure and keepership. Before bringing any pet home, research first. Massachusetts has stricter animal laws than most states. Often, folks move here from other states with unconventional pets and either have to leave them behind or get the proper permit before legally bringing the animal into Massachusetts. This is where Mass Wildlife comes into the picture. The Massachusetts Division of Fisheries and Wildlife, aka Mass Wildlife, is responsible for the restoration, protection, and management of wild animals. Animal control primarily deals with domestic animals. For a human to house and keep wild species of animals in Massachusetts, they must acquire a Mass Wildlife permit. However, these permits are never issued to keep wildlife as a pet. Permits are given to qualified scientific organizations, research zoos, and commercial businesses. For example, scientists could apply for a Mass Wildlife permit to keep sharks in the Boston Aquarium for research purposes. However, if you wanted to keep a shark as a pet, your permit application would be automatically denied. Again, Mass Wildlife only gives these permits to places such as research facilities and commercial businesses, such as an aquaculture facility. There are animals that Mass Wildlife allows citizens to take from the wild and then keep without a permit. Bears are not one of them. This bear needs to stay in either a research facility such as the zoo or out in the wild. Animals you can take from the wild and keep as pets include most frogs, salamanders, turtles, and snakes. Of the allowed animals, Mass residents can only have 2 animals of the same species captured from the wild at any time. Please note that you cannot catch and keep any rare or endangered species of frogs, salamanders, turtles, and snakes. There are certain wild animals you can purchase and legally keep in Massachusetts. These include fish, amphibians, turtles, snakes, lizards, birds, hedgehogs, chinchillas, mice, rats, southern flying squirrels, and hamsters. Keep in mind that when you're trying to sell or trade animals, the law is different. For example, selling fish as bait requires a permit, whereas keeping the fish as a pet does not. Here's the list of what Mass Wildlife considers to be domesticated animals that you don't need a permit for. Animals that have been genetically bred for domestication may be possessed, propagated, maintained, imported, bought, sold, or otherwise disposed of without the need for Mass Wildlife permit or licensure. If the animal in question isn't on this list, it's automatically considered wild. Though ligers are certainly cool, Permits to keep cat-feline hybrids and wolf-canine hybrids are only issued to research facilities and not to citizens who wish to keep such an animal as a pet. Advocacy groups and citizens alike are critical of current animal law in Massachusetts, and for good reason. There is a clear link between animal cruelty and family violence. Perpetuators of animal cruelty send a clear message that if they're abusing animals, they're most likely abusing humans too. Studies have confirmed that animal abuse can be a sign of familial abuse and vice versa. This table shows the more egregious animal crimes and the maximum penalties. As there aren't any mandatory minimums, a judge has the authority to give fines to an offender that maliciously kills an animal instead of jail or prison time. Activists argue that animal or not, any person who can maliciously harm another living thing should receive jail time. When will the law catch up with what's happening in the United States? Approximately 1 million animals a year are killed or abused in connection with domestic violence. Though there aren't any official statistics on animal victims in the United States, it is safe to assume that most cases go unreported and underinvestigated. Samples of prison inmates convicted for violent crimes had elevated rates of animal abuse in their childhood, and there is a substantial body of anecdotal and case study evidence suggesting that some serial killers were cruel to animals in their childhood. Violence against animals and interpersonal violence seem to be linked primarily because they occur disproportionately in the same households, where various different forms of family violence tend to coexist. Clearly, there is a link between violent offenders and animal abuse. This link is all the evidence activists need to support harsher punishment for animal abusers. If not for the sake of the animals, at least for the seriousness of the crime. Again, anyone who could maliciously kill another living thing exhibits deviant behavior and should receive jail or prison time as a proper punishment. Enough of the negativity! Here are the groups completing significant advocacy work for animal justice. The MSPCA Angel Advocacy Team works tirelessly to advance stronger animal protection laws in Massachusetts. You can join the Animal Action Team and help pass laws and advocate for our animal friends. In August of 2012, Massachusetts Governor Deval Patrick signed this bill, which most notably adds pets to domestic abuse prevention orders, ensuring that both human and animal victims of domestic violence can be covered by a restraining order. Other highlights include the establishment of a statewide homeless animal fund, paid for with voluntary contributions from citizens, to fund spay and neuter surgeries in state animal shelters, which will significantly reduce the number of homeless animals in Massachusetts. Prohibiting inhumane methods of euthanasia for animals in shelters deemed too aggressive or too ill to be adopted into homes, and mandatory training for animal control officers. The Animal Rescue League of Boston is an animal shelter, but its most significant contribution is animal rescue. When animals are in trouble, Animal Rescue League officers and rescue teams are called into action. This organization is instrumental to the rescue of abused, neglected, and all other animals in trouble. This next section is a review of some of the resources available to Mass residents who want more in-depth animal law information. The Animal Legal and Historical Center of Massachusetts, as well as the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Trial Court Law Libraries, both have verbatim law books about animal law online for anyone to view. These are the resources used to compile the presentation you just watched. In conclusion, Massachusetts needs to reconsider current punishments for animal abusers. As American ethics and morals advance, our laws need to as well. Activists and supporters will continue to fight for animal justice in Massachusetts.